Our next story is a story. Well, that's the way it starts. But once again, the perception is all. Why I'll Never Go Back to Albuquerque is written by William E. Gregory.
I walked the few blocks from the hotel to Old Town. I was a bit disappointed. Most of the booths, both the Hispanic and the Indian, were just filled with tourist trash. I was about to go back to the hotel when I saw an old man squatting on his heels against a wall. He was wearing faded jeans and a Levi jacket. I could tell by the elaborate rolls of white hair at the back of his neck that he was a real old-time Navajo. He had what looked like a saddle blanket spread on the ground in front of him. I could see several pieces of jewelry on the blanket. It was all museum-quality stuff. Heavy, old, patinaed silver, deeply colored turquoise with copper-colored inclusions.
Here, this is for you.
Suddenly, I remembered the stories I had heard as a child about Navajo witches and how they could gain power over people. Oh, thank you.
Barbara, it's for you. I'll give it to you. Barbara, come back.
I don't want it.
No, Barbara, come back.
No!
It's for you.
No!
I'll give it to you.
I ran from the market. At one point, I looked back and I saw the old man running after me. He was holding out the necklace. Oh, God, I turned on every bit of speed I had and I ran all the way to the hotel. It's no wonder I didn't have a stroke and die right there on the street in Albuquerque. By the time I reached the hotel, I was completely winded. Will you do something for me? I'm leaving today, but I want to know, could you go down to the market and see if there's an old Navajo man sitting on a blanket selling some jewelry just at the corner? I can give you very exact directions on it. She agreed and returned quickly.
No, Senora, there wasn't anybody like that. None of the vendors had seen him. I asked my cousin Monica, too. She and her husband are in their booth all the time. They said they never saw anyone like that.
Oh, I feel so much better just telling you this. Thank you for listening. Okay, so what do you think? Did I just panic? Did I lose out on a really great bargain? Or did I escape becoming a witch's slave for the rest of my life? And maybe beyond?
Barbara, I found you. Here, this is for you.
Welcome to Reimagined Radio, a program about radio storytelling. I'm Jack Armstrong. With each episode, we combine dialogue, sound effects, and music to engage your listening imagination. This episode is no different, and here to tell you about it is John Barber, producer and host.
Thank you, Jack. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Our episode is WRW Retrospective. It's a story about Willamette Radio Workshop, a group of enthusiasts based in Portland, Oregon, who volunteer their time and effort to promote radio theater by performing it live for audiences around the region. I'll talk with two members of the workshop who, looking back and looking ahead, have some very interesting stories to share. Our episode originates from KXRW-FM, Vancouver, Washington's community radio station. We thank them for their support. And we thank you for joining us as Reimagined Radio presents WRW Retrospective, 2 decades of radio storytelling. Willamette Radio Workshop, abbreviated as WRW, is a collection of actors, writers, singers, musicians, and sound designers interested in radio theater. Their live performances and studio productions of radio storytelling span 2 decades and have attracted regional, national, and international attention, along with several awards. You'll hear samples from WRW Productions, and you'll hear from 2 people who know the WRW story from origin to present, Marc Rose and Sam Mowry. Marc Rose is a composer and sound designer whose credits include many performances of Willamette Radio Workshop. Sam A. Mowry founded Willamette Radio Workshop in 2001 and continues to direct its efforts. Thank you both for joining us. Let's begin with you, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I feel like saying having us as the workshop.
It's a pleasure to visit with you as well, Sam, and the workshop. Let's start with some context. How long has Willamette Radio Workshop been involved with radio storytelling? And how did you begin this adventure?
This is our 22nd year. We started in October of 2001. The way we started is always kind of fascinating to me because I've been a stage actor for 40 years. I've always loved radio. My father was very much into radio. I have several album collections of The Shadow and Fibber McGee and Molly and things like that. I worked at KBOO when I first moved to Portland, and I really enjoyed working at KBOO back then. Jumped to 2001. I was reading the newspaper and checking for auditions, and there was this thing about a meetup at the library for people interested in doing radio dramas. And I was like, that sounds interesting. I wonder how that would happen. So I went and showed up, and it was at the library in their big meeting room. And first thing I noticed was there were like 8 other theater people I knew who were there, and I didn't know that they were into radio. They didn't know I was into radio. And we sat there, and a young man, Michael Hopcroft, the spiritual godfather of the Willamette Radio Workshop, because he had this meeting, and he got up and explained his vision, which was a science fiction series where everyone would record their pieces at home and then send them to him, and then he would cut them all together. Now, for all of us stage actors, we were like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. We're not working with each other. How would we know how to read something if we didn't get the feedback? So we listened to his pitch, and then people started talking about reservations they had about that kind of thing. And it was basically, you'll record something on the mic on your laptop and send it to us, and 6 months from now, we'll have the finished product. And we just really weren't game for it. Now, then that would seem totally bizarre. Now I realize that's what, 80% of the audio drama podcasts out there, that's how they're done.
It sounds like you were put off by the proposed switch from stage acting to radio storytelling. What changed your mind?
What happened was, after the meeting, we started talking to each other in a little group, and then I noticed these 2 people over by the side of the room. They were talking with each other, and I had very much liked what they had said in the process, and they obviously had more of an understanding of how to edit and put things together just from the questions they were asking. And so we came over and started talking to each other, and it was Mark and Rob just hit it off right away, I'd say. And they started telling us about a project they were working on called Dry Smoke and Whispers. And he was like, yeah, we've just come to town, and yeah, we're looking for more actors. And it seems like there's some people here who are involved in radio, want to be involved in radio. And I was like, well, sure, come on over to my house. I got a 2-car garage, and we can, we rehearse in there. We can come in and you can audition all the actors you want. And we did, and it was a great experience. And they are both geniuses when it comes to radio drama. And, we pretty much everybody who auditioned ended up doing something in the show.
Just to clarify, when you say you met Mark and Rob at that meeting, you're talking about Marc Rose and Rob Cannon. Mark is with us today, and we'll hear from him soon. Rob is a graphic designer and writer. He collaborates with Mark to produce the Dry Smoke and Whispers radio series, about which we'll learn more later.
Yeah, and that was just the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And Mark and I have done, I can't even count the number of shows that we've done over 20 years. Then decided, we need to do our own show. We need to get together and create our own stuff.
Willamette Radio Workshop is noted for adapting classic radio dramas and offering innovative radio storytelling. How did this evolve?
We would meet in the backyard of Rob Cowell and Mary Robinette Cowell, award-winning science fiction author. We just sit around in a circle and talk about what we wanted to do and what we liked and what we didn't like and what we liked about radio as opposed to theater or movies. And as we went around, eventually came down to, well, we needed to do something. We needed to do something that already had handled all the problems of audio drama for us to figure out how to move forward. So we decided to do, surprise, surprise, War of the Worlds. And we set up to do War of the Worlds. That year, Friday night was on the 30th of October, and we got a theater space that we could use at midnight on the 30th of October, and we did War of the Worlds.
The War of the Worlds, starring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air, is the most famous radio drama ever broadcast. Your first public performance, and you decide to go big. What happened?
When the doors opened, our ticket-taking person came up and said, "I've got 175 reservations, and the theater only holds 100 people." I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Luckily, about 50 people didn't show up because there were people at the door as well. But we managed to squeeze them all in there, and we did War of the Worlds, and we had big, huge, giant Foley sound effects, and with Marty Gallagher doing the live Foley with Amy Gray. The two of them took that over, and it was wonderful. But we didn't have microphones. We didn't have computers or anything to do sound effects. It was all just us acting out what we thought a live radio show would be. And we loved it, and we had great audiences. And so we said, what can we do next?
Marty Gallagher, with his extensive background in stage design, lighting, and sound, along with his talents as a music composer, is a valuable asset to WRW. As for the question, what's next? That's always the question when you're involved in a creative activity, isn't it? What was your follow-up to the War of the Worlds?
We next had KBOO Radio, and D. May Roberts has a show called Stage and Studio. And every once in a while, she would hit a point where she was going to miss a show, and she had heard about our show and said, "Hey, would you like to do a live radio show for us?" And I was like, "Sure," because I'm not afraid of anything.
D. May is a two-time Peabody Award-winning radio producer and writer. Her radio show adds national quality arts, literature, and media to our regional arts scene. This was a big break for you, Sam, and WRW. Tell us what happened.
Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning was our time slot. So all of our unemployed actors agreed to do the show. And we did something that my wife Cindy wrote for us, which was called The Call of the Mummy. She had never written for radio before, but I played her a bunch of my favorite stuff and just said, "I need this show in a week." And she wrote it, and we rehearsed for a week. Then we did the live show, and it was, I ran across the tape of it when I was looking for things for this show. And it was pretty rough. But it was live radio theater, and we just really kind of got us all very excited by the process of doing it. One of the things I always loved was our slogan, which was "Live Radio Lives." And then Chris Porter, of course, said, or it could be "Live Radio Lives." So now whenever I put that on any of our promotions, it says "Live Radio Lives, Live Radio Lives."
When you first started with live performances of radio drama, did you call yourself Willamette Radio Workshop, or did that name evolve over time?
Yeah, pretty much, because we couldn't agree on what we wanted to do. So, of course, we argued over things like what name. Our inspiration was always Orson Welles as an actor, as people who loved film, which all of us did. he was the god of radio, as far as we knew. And a lot of people were saying, oh, we should just be the Mercury Theater on the air. And I thought that was, not very original. So I was like, he did a lot of work for the Columbia Workshop. And, we have the Columbia River here. And I said, well, again, it'll be confusing for people. So we said, oh, why don't we make it the Willamette Radio Workshop? Because, that's the other big river around here.
So the word workshop in your title is a nod to the Columbia Workshop and their experimental approach to radio storytelling on CBS Radio, 1936 to 1943, and then again from 1946 to 1947?
Exactly, and that's what I've always wanted that to be the essence of what we do, is to be a workshop where we try things out and try different things. Because my favorite part of being an actor in theater is the rehearsal process, where you try things and they fail. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they succeed, but you're always striving to do something new and different. And so I thought that would be a good touchstone for us as a company to do that. And over the years, we went from when we started to do more live shows, we started working with the McMinimans because we had an actress friend of ours who was the special events booker. And she was like, oh, you guys should come do a Halloween show for us. It was fun, but it was a whole different thing. We added another layer of being a live company as opposed to doing things in the studio where you have much greater control.
We'll return to Sam Mowry and his stories about Willamette Radio Workshop after I tell you about the Fusebox Show, produced by our other guest, Marc Rose. Fusebox is a different kind of radio storytelling, full of quirky conversation and comedy, driven by a madcap but purposeful design. Here's a sample.
Fusebox.
And remember to watch for dinosaurs driving 73 Vegas. They'll chase you to hell and back, man.
Or at least to the nearest Arby's.
Didn't they eat the hearts of people?
Aztecs?
No, Catholics.
Lake of Fire, Mr. Gaines. Lake of Fire. Catch Fusebox the first Wednesday of the month at 12:30 p.m. here on KXRW 99.9.
Learn more at the Fusebox Show website, thefuseboxshow.com. This is Reimagined Radio. I'm John Barber. Our episode is WRW Retrospective. I'm talking with Sam A. Mowry, founder and director of WRW, Willamette Radio Workshop. Sam, you founded WRW in 2001. When you started, you were willing to be experimental and take on anything. But was there a type of radio drama on which you hoped to focus your efforts?
Well, that's a great question. And when we started, we had, like I said, 8 to 10 people and everybody had their own agenda as to what they wanted to do. But after we started to do the shows, kind of thinned the herd a little bit in terms of, because it's a lot of work and it's tricky. It's not the same as live theater and it's not the same as film. There's a real art to being able to take the script and lift it up off the page that not everybody can do well. I mean, everybody can read in front of a microphone, but to be an actor and really make it come alive is kind of tricky. Many times we said, well, should we just do horror? Should we just do suspense? Should we just do science fiction? Because at the time, and still today, almost all radio theater troupes have something that they focus in on.
A specific theme or type of program.
Yeah. And so I always kind of fought against that. And with so many different people, it made it easy because people were like, oh, let's do some comedies. Let's do some drama. Let's do some science fiction. And we did them all. And as we progressed, and McMinimans was great because they gave us several different slots during the year that we could do at their various properties. And so that was great because we didn't have to, rent a hall. They basically gave us a place to perform.
Once you've chosen a radio story, how do you prepare and lead your actors to the performances for which WRW is noted?
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of it is, the thing I do most is work with the actors and help them to have a living performance when you're reading, because that's something that I'm a voice actor for my day job, and I've got a lot of experience of reading scripts and cold readings, and something I do well enough to support myself, so that's good. And so most of my work as a director is working with the actors. And then when it comes to sound design and music design and things like that, get the most brilliant people you can to work with you. And that's where I got Marc Rose and Marty Gallagher and Amy Gray and Peter Armetta and Galen Huckins for our St. James Infirmary. Amazing stuff that they did. We would get together and talk about what we were looking for and what I wanted, but I always left most of it up to the designers because they're sound designers, or musicians. And it's interesting with David Ian. He's our resident Foley person now, and resident Foley person for everyone in the Pacific Northwest, actually. David, it's always like, I would go through and say, okay, so here are the sound effects I think we're going to need. And I'd hand him a page of sound effects. And he'd say, well, I looked over the script and this is what I have. And he'd have 5 pages of possible sound effects. And when it started out with David, I would then go through and say, okay, I don't want that. That's stupid. But what we kind of developed as a style of Foley and in sound design as well is more kind of a suggestive thing. We create an atmosphere to listen to, and that's what we want in music and sound design, and Foley are things that propel the show, bring you into the space, and sound design and great Foley are that you don't notice it, when you're listening to it. It just fills the space and creates the space. So, I mean, it's more impressionistic sound design, or, I don't know if there's an actual name for it, but it's just kind of what we developed as we went through was, I don't think we need that. Try to keep things as essential as possible. And that's one of my jobs as the director is to help shape what we consider essential. And there are times that I'm overruled. I'll say, I don't want to do this. And, they're kind of like, let's try it. Let's do it. And we get together and we run through it. And I hear the sound effect or the Foley. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That works. I love radio because it is a very collaborative experience. And then working with somebody like Mark, who he and Rob had been doing radio theater down in Florida for 20 years before you came up here. Was it, Mark?
Yeah, we started in 1980. Yeah.
So I just learned so much from working with him, talking to him, listening to his shows, watching him work. I've managed over the years to get better as a sound designer on things when Mark's not available or Marty's busy, or that's the thing over 20 years. There's a lot of ups and downs and people working with us, and Mark is very busy with his podcast Fusebox now, and I understand that means he's not always available to us. And Mark is totally a studio rat, as they would say.
It's a little extreme.
I have dragged him out to more live shows that he's probably ever wanted to do, and even got him to play live guitar,
which was fun. That was a great delight. It was a privilege, actually.
As I recall, we 3 met at one of your live performances.
I don't remember which show it was exactly where you came to McMiniman's Kennedy School.
It was one of your Halloween performances.
Yeah.
We all met there then for the first time, and it was a great experience. It was one of the few times when I've seen Mark at one of your live performances.
There you are.
I think I can remember only twice that I saw Mark at one of your performances.
I have pictures of more times.
Yes, we've 1 or 2 more for sure.
Sam, you've talked about scripted dialogue and sound effects. You just mentioned Marc playing guitar. Can you tell us more about the use of music in productions by Willamette Radio Workshop?
Music is key, and another one of the things that makes our productions sound so good is that we've had so many wonderful musicians working with us. One of the shows that was on Reimagined Radio earlier in the year was our hero in Leyden, and Peter Armetta composed the music for that, and it's beautiful. And we did St. James Infirmary, where Galen Huckins put together a jazz group to basically play variations of St. James Infirmary as the interstitial music and as underscoring for certain places. Marty Gallagher, one of my favorite things that he did for us was The Wind That Shakes the Corn. It was written by Sam Gregory. And it starts off as a narrator, and I imagined a small Midwestern Presbyterian church that my grandfather used to preach at in the distance, and you could hear this pump organ playing this very mournful little tune that when Marty sat down and started to play that, it just completely set the entire production.
We have a sample of that. Let's listen to it now.
The wind blows through time, through space, over the landscape of memory. It's the middle of the previous century, in the autumn of the year. The landscape of gentle hills rolls into the distance, covered with rustling fields of corn. Dark oak trees, their leaves brilliant orange in the golden autumn light, stand beside white frame houses nestled in the cornfields. The sky and roads are a light gray, which fades to white in the distance.
Marty did a great job evoking place and space, didn't he? Just that bit of music, and my imagination takes over, creating a world and a way to be in that world.
He's great at that. Marc is great at that, at finding a style of music or instrumentation that provokes an emotional response beyond just kind of like, oh, that sounds pretty or that fits there. It creates emotional depth and resonance to what's happening.
Let's talk now about Marc Rose. He's a 3-time Emmy award-winning sound designer. He produces his own radio shows, Fusebox, as we heard earlier, and Dry Smoke and Whispers, which we'll talk about shortly. He has composed themes for AT&T, Jack Hanna's Wildlife Adventures, Bush Entertainment, Capital Radio London, and many independent films. Sam, tell us a story about working with Marc on a Willamette Radio Workshop performance.
I remember one of the first times Marc and I worked on War of the Worlds, and he created a new, the original had Bernard Herrmann and his, probably 12-piece orchestra playing something that Herrmann wrote underneath the end of War of the Worlds, and you couldn't pick that out, and we just didn't happen to have a 12-piece orchestra. But we did have Marc Rose, and that he was able to create a stunning underscoring underneath it. And, we had rehearsed several times, and then he came in with the music. And what was amazing was I was able to just read it, and the natural flow and sweep of the piece that came up to the end just timed out perfectly. It was like the first time I read it to the music, we both finished right where it's supposed to be. It was just kind of like, that's absolutely perfect. And he does that time and time again. When we did the Martian Death March, he had some lovely underscoring, which had so many pathos-filled speeches and moments. And the music just brought such extra emotional depth and weight to the piece. I love to do it over and over.
If I could just add one thing here that occurred to me during all those working with all those things, is having worked with these actors over a period of years, you really start to get a sense for how they might approach something. Not predictive, but you get a sense for what the timing might be, and I think that helped a lot in those two instances you just cited, Sam, because I could hear them in my head, like how they would do this and where they might take a turn or whatever, and so it was kind of inviting them to do what they're going to do by default anyway. But I too was sort of stunned to see the results of that.
Well, part of the beauty of that also is that Marc is a fabulous voice actor as well, and he understands the needs of doing radio drama as an actor, and how music can help carry things along. But yeah, we've really lucked out. We've had some fabulous people. We did an American Gothic thing, and we had a group of shape note singers come and sing with us. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Music is just essential, and it's also very hard with a live show, because it's, a live band or a live musician requires a whole separate kind of control in terms of mixing them in and their sound and what they can hear, and it's a challenge, but it always is, and it should be. Any artistic adventure should be challenging. It shouldn't be easy. And we've done a lot of shows, and they all offer their own in particular challenges.
These are very interesting stories, Sam, about the working relationships between you and Marc. They speak to a number of performances by Willamette Radio Workshop. I've heard about one performance that I'd like to know more about. Allegedly, Marc suggested using a computer program during this performance to achieve a special sound effect. And at that time, this program was not being used in the manner he suggested for the results you both desired.
You may remember this, Sam. We were talking about how to, because I think at that point it was still Foley, and then maybe there was a tape recorder or something involved, to fire off effects and stuff. I had just been experimenting with this piece of software that was not utilized for this purpose whatsoever, but it was embraced rather heartily by the dance community, and still is. It's still in very active use, and that was a piece called Ableton Live, which allowed you to trigger things in real time, extend them, slow them down, play with their in and out points, do mixes, all on the fly, depending upon what was happening on the stage, which is sometimes very important because things are happening on the stage that are not necessarily predictable. So you want to be able to respond to that. And this software seemed to be like a natural fit for that. And I don't remember what the first show was, but may have been one of the Halloweens.
I think it was Frankenstein.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think because of the time I remember most, there was a moment where Frankenstein and his mentor were talking out in the street, and you had horses and carriages rolling by and people walking by, and Marc was able to do it so that they started doing the horses' hooves and the sounds of the bridles and stuff, and we had the two Foley people doing that, and then they would stop doing that and go over and start working on a different piece of Foley, but Marc had picked up and recorded the horses and was able to just loop that into the background, and it was like a 10-minute scene, and your arms would have fallen off if you had to do the horse hooves all the way through with the coconuts. And the thing was, I was telling people about it afterwards, and nobody noticed it. It just was so completely natural and sounded so completely natural that nobody picked up that it was actually being looped into it. And then we also used it to excellent effect on the Confessions of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that was a great piece of equipment. We haven't used it as much because it requires a little more...
It requires an operator, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
This is Reimagined Radio. Our episode is WRW Retrospective. I'm John Barber, talking with Sam A. Mowry, founder and director of Willamette Radio Workshop, and Marc Rose, award-winning sound designer who has contributed to several WRW performances and productions. One of your performances relies heavily on sound design and sound effects. Please tell us about producing The Fall of the City.
Yeah, that was, it was fairly early on. And once we started, I started listening to a lot more radio theater looking for pieces. And I came across that online. And Archibald MacLeish, who I had known a lot about as the poet laureate of the United States, and I'd heard a lot about, and he wrote J.B., and he had written some things for stage. But I had never heard of Fall of the City. And then I saw that Orson Welles was involved, so I was more excited. And I listened to it and just loved the whole piece. I love poetry. I love the political milieu. It listens, Mark and I were talking earlier and said it's been perfect for every generation since it was written. Sadly, we don't learn these lessons. But it's a beautiful piece. And so I brought it back and played it for the whole group, and everybody loved it, and we decided we would go ahead and do it, and talked to Mark about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I love that." And so he came in on it, and we did it. In one day we recorded over at PCC Sylvania's theater. We were able to rent the theater for a day, and we had the entire cast in there, and we recorded the whole thing in one day. We did all the live Foley of the crowds, and it was an amazing day. We had Michael Gansey came and did the recording, brought his Niagara setup and his microphones, which were great. It was just a really special day. And then Rob, who was producing it with me, Rob Cowell, and we were talking about it, and Mark was going to do the sound design. And he said, "Oh, well, give it to me and I'll let you know when I'm done." And it seemed like it was just a couple of days. It might have been longer, but it seemed like an impossibly short amount of time. He showed up with this, and it was just perfect. It was the most amazing sound design I'd ever heard. I couldn't believe it was us when I was listening to it. And that's one of the things that I always talk to young audio dramatists when they're talking about, what's the most important thing. It's kind of like, it's to have an idea of the space you're in. And that seems to work best for actors too, when you're talking to them. Imagine the space you're in. When I was the reporter and I'm whispering into my microphone because something's going on in the distance, and other times when I'm screaming over the sound of the mechanical monster that's coming into the city, just what creates the various spaces you're in. And there's a wonderful sense of being in the middle of this huge, and the whole city. And Mark was able to create a sound design that just perfectly evokes that. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it was amazing.
Let me jump in here to say, for listeners not familiar with The Fall of the City, that the setting is outside, in a huge open plaza of an unnamed city, where thousands of people are gathered.
Yeah.
The Columbia Workshop hired a large crowd of extras for the original recording of the crowd scenes and used the Armory building in downtown New York as a soundstage. You and Mark had maybe a dozen people. Despite these production differences, the sound design magic that Mark created is really quite impressive and definitely makes one feel present, part of the event that is happening.
I think it's important to note, too, that the crowd and their feet steps and that's all an active performer in this particular story. It's not just a background. It's an actual element. It's an interactive element.
The sound design you created has a presence. It's felt and real, like that of a character. Let's listen to this sample from The Fall of the City, sound designed by Marc Rose and performed by Willamette Radio Workshop.
We are here on the Central Plaza. We're well off to the eastward edge. There's a kind of terrace over the crowd here. It's precisely 4 minutes to 12. The crowd is enormous. It might be 10,000. It might be more. The whole square is faces. Opposite over the roofs are the mountains. It is quite clear. There are birds circling. You think they're kites by the look. They're very high. Heat is harsh. The light dazzles like metal. It dazes the air as the clang of a gong does. 1 minute to 12 now. There's still no sign. They're still waiting. Now it is 12. Now they are rising. Now the whole plaza is rising. Fathers are lifting their small children. The plume fans on the platform are motionless. There's no sound but the shuffle of shoe leather. Now even the shoes are still. We can hear the hawks. It's as quiet as that now. It is strange to see such throng so silent. Nothing yet. Nothing's happened. Now there's a sound. They see him. They must see him. They're shading their eyes from the sun. There's a rustle of whispering. They can't see for the glare of it. Yes. Yes. He's there in the end of the street in the shadow. We see him. He's huge. A head taller than anyone else. As broad as a brass door. A hard hero. Heavy of heel on the brick. Clanking with metal. The helm closed on his head. The eye holes hollow. He's coming. He's clear of the shadow. The sun takes him. They cover their faces with fingers. They cower before him. They fall. They sprawl on the stone. He's alone where he's walking. He marches with rattled metal. He tramples his shadow. He mounts by the pyramid, stamps on the stairway, turns. His arm rises. His visor is opening. There's no one. There's no one at all. No one. The helmet is hollow. A medal is empty. The armor is empty. I tell you, there's no one there at all. There's only the metal, the barrel of metal, the bundle of armor. It's empty. The push of a stiff pull at the nipple would topple it. Look, it's his arm. It's rising. His arm's rising. They're watching his arm as it rises. They stir. They cry out. They're shouting. They're shouting with happiness. Listen, they're shouting like troops in a victory. Listen! The city of masterless men has found a master. You'd say it was they were the conquerors. They that had conquered. The city has fallen. The city has fallen.
Marty Gallagher directed all the walking. He did an amazing job. But it's that's I've just been incredibly lucky to work with such talented people, and everybody feels that sense of wanting to strive to do better, to what's the best thing we can do. Some shows, they're not our best, and some shows, they just get done. But it's the beauty of a live show is it has to happen. Uh, but I've been so lucky to have so many great people who just want to work together.
We're enjoying a wide-ranging discussion with Sam A. Mowry and Marc Rose about Willamette Radio Workshop, a well-recognized radio theater group based in Portland, Oregon. Sam, you've shared some great stories from the history of Willamette Radio Workshop. Let's look now in the other direction. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I just found out that we've been offered to do a radio Christmas Carol at the Kiggins Theater again, so we've got that.
So that's your acceptance then. It's on the radio for everyone to hear, right?
Yes, you got me now.
It's got a commitment.
The pandemic really kind of put us on our butts for the last 3 years. We just did our live shows. We did a show for you at the Kiggins, and we did something at the Bell Mansion, and we were very excited by that. And a lot of people saying, when are you doing the UFO Festival again? What are you doing for Halloween? When are you doing the Hobbit again? We really want to move forward. I'm glad that we're doing more things with you again, John, because that's you have been, first it was the McMinimans that gave us something to do on a regular basis. And then we went through, what was it, like, I want to say 6 years of doing a bunch of shows a year. And I love that. I love working with you because your depth of knowledge of shows and scripts and genres is unsurpassed in my book. And I love working with you. And I love when you would say, I was listening to this Gunsmoke, and it just seems so modern. It's just such a great script. And I listened to it, and you were right. And so, let's do that. And that's when we said, you know what? This really lines up well with The Silent Avenger, which is my favorite Shadow episode of all time, which is about, killing and the cost of that and training soldiers to do that. And the Gunsmoke was about Matt Dillon tired of killing people and wanting to stop being a marshal. And then he quits and comes back, and suddenly the town's being overrun by bad guys, and they've killed the school teacher, and he's got to strap on his gun again and go. And I thought, what a great connection that was. And when you said, why don't we do Follow the City? And then we both noticed, I think, that RUR came right after Follow the City in the Columbia Workshop, and RUR was the first appearance of the term robot. And we were like, oh, wow, well, we should do those together.
Yes, those radio dramas worked well together. The Fall of the City and RUR for the reasons you noted, and the Bloody Hands episode from Gunsmoke and the Silent Avenger from The Shadow, because they talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, before it was named, understood, and recognized on a national scale.
But that's the thing, John, I think, and you pushed me. I always shied away from doing comedy because I always thought that they were really based on the performer. And you were like, we should really do funny. And we did Laugh Your Dial Off, did a bunch of comedic shorts, and I loved them. And and that's what I love about working with you, John. You always inspire us to do more and different and outside of our comfort zone, and finding exciting ways to work for new adventures in audio. And I thank you for that. And you've done an amazing job, and you really are the lightning rod for audio drama in the Pacific Northwest, and I think around the world. And I'm hoping to do more with you. That's going to take us forward, and we're going to be looking for new people, new actors, new writers, new musicians, new sound people, just constantly trying to find ways to bring new people into the fold.
Sam, what about podcasting? It's current, it's popular, it's easy to access. Might it be a way of, as you say, bringing new people into the fold?
More and more people are becoming aware of audio as a medium and something that they listen to and take part in that they hadn't for years before. And to me, podcasting is just radio drama on demand. And so we're hoping to continue on and do more stuff. And hopefully I'll be around to do it. And hopefully I'll have people like Mark and yourself and Marty and Cindy and Sam and everybody. David and Dino.
What impact do you think podcasting will have on Willamette Radio Workshop's future storytelling?
Yeah, well, I think that, like I was saying earlier, I think that podcasts are the new currency. It's harder and harder to get on actual broadcast, and it's one of the things I love about Reimagined Radio is you actually broadcast and are actually on radio. I think that's fabulous. But podcasts are here and are probably going to be the future. And, we actually, several years back, we did PDX Podcast Live, and we did one of our shows Through the Turnstiles. And we had our friend Christopher Hart and his podcast of Exoplanetary do a live version, and The Diarist, which is another podcast. And neither of those had ever done a live show. And so we got together with them, and they were interested in doing the live show with us. And so we created kind of a live podcast show. And it's one of the things that we talk about more and more is looking for more of these kind of collaborations with other artists, that the workshop can be, again, more of a workshop, and see what we can do and see how we can develop and expand scripted pieces on podcasts.
This is Reimagined Radio. I'm John Barber, producer and host. With each episode, we explore radio storytelling using voice, sound effects, and music. Here are some examples.
It's a mechanical pig. One of two said to exist in the world. Have you seen the second one?
Smoke comes out! Black smoke drifting over the city! People in the streets see it now! People trying to run away from it, but it's no use! They're falling like flies!
Reimagined Radio. Nothing to see, everything to hear. Heard the third Monday of every month at 1 p.m. Sundays at 6 p.m. on KXRW 99.9 FM.
Future episodes include a look behind the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King, a documentary about the coordinated terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, and the remount of Dry Smoke and Whispers you'll hear about in just a moment. More information and listening opportunities are available at our website, reimaginedradio.net. Reimagined Radio is also available as podcasts. Subscribe, listen, like, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Mark, I understand you and Sam are revisiting Dry Smoke and Whispers. Can you provide some details about what you're planning?
Sure, yeah. We're going to remount. We seem to do this about every 8-9 years. We seem to trot out another story. I don't know what that's about, but we are going to do another one. And of course, Dry Smoke and Whispers was a series that ran for several years and was syndicated. It was the very first thing I ever syndicated on public radio in my whole life. And it's a series we keep coming back to. And we've gone back through the archives. We found a story that we first did in 1980, and I think we're going to remount that one again. And it will be premiered, of course, on Reimagined Radio, because why not? But yeah, we're going to be working with Sam. We're going to be working with a lot of folks in our mutual universe here to bring this one back to life. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a hoot.
We did a live original Dry Smoke and Whispers for WRW at the UFO Festival one year.
That's right. Yeah. The Jewel, it was called. That was an experience. That was a real experience. I got to tell you, I've spent my entire life in a booth, so it was like, well, this is going to be interesting. Not only live, but having other people, around you at the same time, interacting. So it was just really a great experience. Really grateful to have had it.
It turned out really well, and we had the best poster ever. Because Rob did the poster and he's a professional graphic artist.
We're almost out of time, sadly. Is there anything else, Sam, that you'd like to say about Willamette Radio Workshop and your 2 decades of radio storytelling?
Oh, I know I'm leaving peoples and shows and moments out of everything, from Liz Russell and Claudine Hemingway. I think we pretty much covered it. As much as you can in an hour of 22 years worth of work, and I suppose the real fun of it is that there are a bunch of stories I haven't told, a bunch of stories I'll tell again, and we'll be creating new stories as we go along, because that's I think that it's the beauty of radio, and I use that unabashedly. Yes, it's radio. Is that it's the ultimate storytelling medium, and it's you and your listener. And during World War II, it was that amber glowing light in the living room that gave people hope and led them through the worst conflict in history, and made them laugh and made them cry, and connected them with the rest of the world. And the Golden Age was brief and fabulous, but I think that there's another era coming, the Platinum Age of radio, that we'll see coming after us. And I hope that we keep it going and inspire more young people to join in.
This is Reimagined Radio. Our episode is WRW Retrospective, a wide-ranging storytelling session about Willamette Radio Workshop, the premier radio theater group in Portland, Oregon. I've been talking with Sam A. Mowry, founder and director of WRW, and with Marc Rose, a 3-time Emmy Award-winning sound designer who has made and continues to make great contributions to Willamette Radio Workshop and Reimagined Radio. Not for Hollywood wages, by the way.
But he is more than willing to work for Hollywood wages. Anybody out there looking to hire him?
Reimagined Radio is produced with support from KXRW-FM, Vancouver, Washington's community radio station. Episodes are archived at our website, reimaginedradio.net. Podcasts are available at the major platforms or our website. Content curation and script by John Barber. Sound design, music composition, and post-production by Marc Rose. Graphic design by Holly Slocum Design. Our announcer is Jack Armstrong. This is John Barber, producer and host. Thank you for listening.
This has been a production of Reimagined Radio. Our radio broadcasts are heard on local, regional, and international community radio stations. For on-demand streaming, point your browsers to our website, Reimagined Radio, that's all one word, no punctuation, .net. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us again for another episode of Reimagined Radio, where we'll continue our exploration of radio storytelling.